What's up, K-Divas, and welcome back to the channel. This week this is going to be another DIY tutorial, and in this video I'm going to be sharing how I created this sleeve placket. You typically find this along the hem of tailored shirts, tailored blouses, and it's a way to allow you to add cuff and buttons to the sleeve of a shirt. Now this is what it looks like on a typical shirt or blouse, but you can also incorporate this along the neckline on the front edge of a shirt if you wanted to. If you like to see how I created this, the pattern, the sewing, make sure to keep on watching. Starting off with the pattern for the placket, I'm going to be drawing a somewhat short vertical line that is going to help me create the other lines that this pattern has. Now the next line I'm going to be drawing is 2.5 centimeters or 1 inch away from the initial line that we drew. I'm going to repeat the same thing and draw another 1 inch wide or 2.5 cm line. And once I have that one, the next line I'm going to be drawing is 1 centimeter or half an inch away from the previous one. Now the height doesn't really matter right now, the distances is what is important. Now the next one here is 2 centimeter or 1 inch away, and once we have those lines drawn, I'm just going in here to square across the bottom so we have an even hemline. And then along this edge I'm going to be marking 13 centimeters or 5 inches and squaring that point across like so we have somewhat of a rectangular shape. Now along this edge I'm going to be marking 5 centimeters or 2 inches upwards, and this I'm only going to be drawing across those two end lines so you have a square along this point. Now you would need to add a 1 centimeter or half an inch seam allowance all the way around. That would allow you to actually sew the placket into the garment, into the cuff, or have you finish it nicely. I'm just using a blue pen so you know which line is the seam allowance line. Now that we have that all drawn, I'm going to be drawing the line along where I'm going to be cutting the placket. Now it's the middle of that 1 centimeter or half an inch point, and once we have that drawn in shape, I'm just going in here to add my grain line and any annotations that I need to keep in mind before cutting out the pattern. Now this is what the typical placket pattern looks like. You would need to cut a pair or two pieces because you want to have one to place on each sleeve, or you just cut one if you're going to be putting this along the neckline of a shirt, of a gown, of a blouse, but this is the shape. Now once you have the pattern done and you have all of your annotations ready, I'm going to go in and cut this onto fabric. Now transferring the lines onto the fabric with a chalk or some kind of marker pen would make folding and finishing a lot neater. Now I had to do this a few times before I got it right. I also cut out a piece that is going to be acting as my sleeve, and you would want to sew the placket closer to the back end or where your back sleeve curve is because you want it to sit on the side when it's all done. The placket has to be sewn on the wrong side onto the wrong side of the fabric. So you mark your lines on the wrong side of your placket and on the wrong side of your sleeve. And the line on my example sleeve here is the same distance or the same height as the part we're going to be stitching across, which is 5 inches. Now I've just added some pins here and I'm going to be stitching a rectangular shape that goes from one end around the top and down the other end, so we have a middle area that would allow us to cut and create the opening that a placket typically has. Once I was done stitching the placket onto the example sleeve, this is what it looks like on the right side. If you're happy with the way everything sits, I'm going to go in and grab a scissors to cut right through the middle of that part we just stitched. Now once you cut it, there's no turning back, so just make sure that you're happy with everything first. When you get to the top of the cut, you want to make a triangular shape that goes right to the edge of the tops of the stitch that we just did. The closer it is to the edge, the easier and smoother it will be on the wrong side of the garment. Now that this is all done, I'm going to turn this to the right side of the garment. So I'm going to be starting with the shorter end because that one would need to go over to the other side, be folded over the raw edge and then stitched down. That is going to become the part that sits under the main side of the placket. Now I'm just adding some pins here to hold down my fold. Once this is nicely folded and pinned away, I'm going to be sewing with a closed or narrow edge stitch to sew this side of the placket. This is going to be the bottom side and it's going to be tucked away under the main feature of a placket. Now I'm going to move to my ironing board to iron that particular stitch that we just made, as well as the other end. You would need to fold and iron this smaller end first and then fold it again along one of the lines that we drew inside. You want to fold it as straight as possible before going in to iron it flat. Iron it over the narrow edge or the narrow seam that we just made earlier on. Once that is nicely pressed and flat like this, you would need to go back in and fold the top edge to create that triangular pointed shape that a placket normally has. Now you can do this one at a time, so you can fold one edge, iron it, fold the other edge, iron it, or you can fold both edges if you are sure that they would make a similar shape and be equal on both sides, and then iron both edges flat so we have our pointed top edge of the placket. Once all of that is nicely ironed and tucked away, I'm just checking to see that I am happy with the fold and I'm happy with the way this top side of the placket sits over the bottom end. Also double check that you're happy with the way the back looks as well. You want to have it nice and tidy. If that all works for you, you would need to sew the open ends closed. So sew along this edge around the pointed top edge and down the side. And then it's optional to make the cross or the X shape. You can also just have like two lines going across the top end where the other side sort of stops. The shape, the lines is really a thing of personal preference, but here I'm just going to sew it all around until I get to the top end of the bottom bearing side and then make a line or a seam that goes across. And after making that short seam horizontally, I'm going to go into sew a X shape that sort of like reinforces the top of the placket. It can also be a decorative feature if you play around with the color of the stitch, but mine didn't even turn out perfect, and this was like my 4th try making this, so just be mindful when you're making yours. Now this is how it turned out. I'll say it's at like 65 over 100. I can definitely improve on the neatness of the stitch, especially around the top and along the back, as you can see here. But I thought it was a good first try to show you guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you'll be trying this, don't forget to tag me on social media at KimDaveDesigns. And until my next video, have a good morning, afternoon and evening wherever you are. Bye.